My name is Celeste Winford. I'm 28 years old, and the night my sister called my award stupid was the same night my whole family learned what public humiliation feels like. It started with one message. I sent a photo of my invitation in our family group chat and told them I'd be receiving an award at a nationally streamed hospitality event. It was the biggest moment of my career, the kind of moment you imagine sharing with the people who raised you. I watched the typing bubble appear, disappear, then return. Finally, my sister answered first. She said they didn't have time for my pointless award because they already had dinner plans. A second later, my mother added, "Don't blame us." My father didn't even bother typing. He just liked my sister's message like that settled everything. I stared at the screen, reread every word, and felt something inside me go strangely still. No tears, no begging, no dramatic speech. I just typed, "That's fine," and put my phone face down on the counter. They thought they were skipping a forgettable little ceremony. They thought they were choosing steak, wine, and laughter over something small. What they didn't know was that the event had a live national broadcast deal, sponsor cameras, interview crews, and thousands of people watching in real time. That night, while they sat under the warm lights of an upscale restaurant pretending my success was beneath them, giant screens across the dining room lit up with my face. And when the host told the audience exactly who I was and who had inspired my journey, my family went completely silent. Before I tell you what they saw next and how that dinner ended, tell me, what time is it for you right now? Where are you watching from? And what's the weather like there? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. The morning of the ceremony, I woke up before sunrise even though I had barely slept. My dress was already hanging on the closet door, my speech folded neatly on the kitchen table, and my nerves were so sharp they felt electric. I kept checking my phone out of habit, not because I expected an apology, but because some small, embarrassing part of me still hoped one of them would change their mind. Nobody did. No message, no call. Just the same silence they always offered whenever my work required real attention instead of casual, convenient praise. I had spent 6 years building my career in hospitality from the ground up. I started as an event assistant carrying crates, taping schedules to walls, cleaning up after other people's big moments. Then I moved into operations, then guest experience strategy, then brand partnerships. The award I was receiving that night wasn't for popularity or luck. It was for designing community dining programs that had been adopted by hotels and cultural venues in 3 states. My work mattered. It just never seemed to matter to them. By the time I arrived at the venue, the place was already humming. Producers moved with headsets and clipboards. Sponsors were setting up banners. Camera operators rolled equipment across polished floors. Large digital screens flashed the event branding at every corner of the ballroom. This was not some little side stage ceremony like my sister had mocked. It was elegant, televised, and impossible to ignore. One of the coordinators rushed over and handed me my mic pack. Another reminded me that the sponsor partnership included a live stream shown not only online, but also on screens in selected partner hotels, bars, and restaurants across the city. I almost laughed when I heard that. Fate had a brutal sense of timing. The restaurant my family had chosen was one of the most visible partner venues in town, a place famous for screening cultural events during dinner service. I knew because I had once recommended it for a hospitality promo campaign. Standing there in heels, with cameras being tested and my name appearing on the rehearsal monitor, I realized something almost poetic. They had rejected my moment so casually that they had walked straight into it anyway. I touched the edge of the stage, took a long breath, and decided I was done shrinking my life to make other people comfortable. Whether they watched or not, I was going to stand in that room like I belonged there. Because I did. When my category was announced, The ballroom quieted in that strange, heavy way large rooms do before something important happens. Then my name filled the air. Celeste Winford. Hearing it through the speakers sent a shock through me. I stood, smiled, and walked toward the stage with my legs somehow steady even though my pulse was pounding so hard I could hear it. The lights were brighter than I expected, but once I reached the center mark and looked out at the crowd, something inside me locked into place. I wasn't the overlooked daughter at the edge of a family dinner table anymore. I was the woman who had built something real. The host introduced my work, describing the dining initiative I had created, the recovery program I helped launch for small event spaces after staffing cuts, and the mentorship workshops I'd started for young women entering hospitality management. I saw heads nodding in the audience. I saw people writing notes. I saw respect. Then the screen behind me shifted to clips from the program rollout, photos from event launches, testimonials from business owners, and a short recorded segment of one hotel executive saying my work had redefined guest experience with empathy and precision. For a second, the room blurred because I felt that praise land in the exact place my family's indifference had lived for years. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't rush. I thanked the committee. I thanked my team. Then I said something I hadn't planned exactly the way it came out. I said that sometimes the people closest to you don't recognize your work when it's still becoming something, that they only understand value once strangers put a spotlight on it. The room got very still, and then several people started clapping before I'd even finished the sentence. I didn't name anyone. I didn't need to. Truth has a way of finding its target without extra help. As the applause rose, one of the production assistants near the side monitor caught my eye and gave me a strange look. Not pity, not concern, more like startled recognition. I glanced sideways at the monitor and saw the live feed split for sponsor placement. On one side was the ballroom. On the other side was a wide shot from a restaurant lounge camera, showing diners watching the broadcast over dinner. The image shifted for only a second, but it was long enough. I knew that table. White linen, brass wall lamps, dark green booth seating, and three familiar faces frozen mid-bite. My mother's wine glass hovered in her hand. My father was staring upward at the screen. My sister looked like someone had poured ice water down her back. They were seeing everything. Not later. Not through a clip. Right then. If there is such a thing as perfect silence, I think my family found it in that restaurant. The sponsor feed only held for a moment before returning fully to the ballroom, but the damage was done. I finished my speech, accepted the award, and walked off stage to a standing ovation that felt almost unreal. Backstage was chaos in the best way. Congratulatory hugs, producers asking for a quick interview, photographers trying to pull me toward the media wall. But underneath all of it, my phone had started vibrating nonstop. I ignored it during the first interview. I ignored it during the second. Then, while a makeup artist dabbed under my eyes before a press segment, I finally looked down. 31 unread messages. Most of them from my family. My sister had sent the first one. "Why are you on every screen here?" Then my mother. "You never explained it was this serious." Then my father, who had said nothing for days, suddenly found language. "Call us now." I almost smiled at that. Not congratulations. Not we're proud of you. Not you. Looked amazing. Just urgency, because now they were embarrassed. A few more messages rolled in while I watched. A cousin had texted, "Monica looks sick. What happened?" An old neighbor sent, "Just saw Celeste on the live stream. Amazing. Thought your whole family would be there." That was the beginning. The real collapse came from the restaurant itself. Someone near their table had recorded the exact moment the host introduced me, while the camera briefly showed sponsor locations. In the clip, my family could be seen sitting directly beneath a screen carrying my face while other diners turned to look at them. Tabitha tried to laugh it off. My mother looked down. My father's jaw was clenched so tightly it looked painful. Within minutes, that clip was in local event stories, tagged by people who had attended the ceremony and recognized me from the broadcast. The caption on one repost said, "Imagine skipping your daughter's award night and getting exposed by the dinner venue screens." It spread fast because humiliation always does. I should tell you, I felt pure triumph in that moment, but the truth was more complicated. What I felt first was clarity. They were not upset because they had hurt me. They were upset because other people had witnessed it. That difference mattered. A producer asked if I was ready for my live winner interview, and I slipped my phone into my clutch without answering anyone. I walked back under the lights, sat across from the host, and told the story of building my career without bitterness in my voice. That was the part that made the night unforgettable. I wasn't angry on camera. I was undeniable. By the time the ceremony ended, my family had called me 11 times. I listened to none of the voicemails until I got home. I took off my heels, set the award on the kitchen table, and stood in the quiet of my apartment for a full minute before pressing play. My mother's message came first. Her voice was shaky, but not with the kind of pain that comes from understanding someone else's heartbreak. It was panic. She said people at the restaurant had recognized them. She said other diners were whispering. She said someone from church had apparently texted her during dessert, asking why she wasn't at her own daughter's ceremony. Then my sister's voicemail played. Hers was angry. She said the whole thing had made them look bad and accused me of letting strangers think the worst. I actually laughed at that, a short, stunned laugh I couldn't stop. Letting strangers think the worst? I had not staged their absence. I had invited them. They chose not to come. They chose to mock the event. They chose the restaurant. All I had done was succeed in public. My father's voicemail was the shortest. This got out of hand. Call me. No apology. No accountability. Just the tone of a man irritated that consequences had arrived before he was ready. I sat down, opened the family chat, and scrolled back to the message thread from 2 nights earlier. There it was in plain text. My invitation, my sister's dismissal, my mother's cold reply, my father's little thumbs-up reaction. I took a screenshot. I didn't post it. I didn't need to. But keeping it felt important, like evidence against the version of events they would definitely try to rewrite later. Around midnight, my best friend Ava came over with takeout and a bottle of sparkling water because she knows I hate being alone after emotionally charged nights. She took one look at my face and said, "They're not sorry they hurt you. They're sorry the world saw them do it." I nodded because that was exactly it. We sat on the floor eating noodles from cartons while my phone kept lighting up on the table. Friends, colleagues, former mentors, old classmates. Message after message of support. People were sharing clips of my speech, quoting lines from the interview, asking if I'd consider speaking at leadership panels. The room filled with warmth from voices that had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with respect. That was the moment I felt the emotional center of the night shift. The story was no longer about being rejected by my family. It was about being recognized anyway. Still, just before bed, I sent one final message to the group chat. You didn't miss something small. You missed one of the most important nights of my life. And the worst part is, you only noticed when it became embarrassing for you. Then I muted the conversation and slept better than I had in weeks. The fallout over the next several days was brutal for them and unexpectedly liberating for me. The clip from the restaurant didn't become some nationwide scandal, but in our city, in hospitality circles, and among everyone who knew our family, it spread more than enough. People love a success story, and they love exposed hypocrisy even more. My interview from the ceremony got reposted by the event organizers. A regional business page highlighted my program and called me one of the most promising voices in guest experience leadership. A local morning show invited me in for a segment on women changing the hospitality industry. Every time my name rose somewhere, the story followed. The daughter who was honored on stage while her family sat in a restaurant calling the whole thing stupid. Meanwhile, their lives began tightening in all the quiet places reputation matters. My father works in finance, where appearances are treated like character references. A client he had been courting for months made a joke during lunch about supporting your children's careers before a camera crew does it for you. The account stalled after that. My mother, Monica Winford, who lives for community approval, suddenly had to answer gentle but pointed questions from women she could never simply ignore. My sister Tabitha had it worst in some ways. She had posted dinner selfies that night before realizing what was on the screens behind her in one of the photos. She deleted them, but not before someone saved them. The comments she got weren't violent, just merciless. Hope the entree was worth it. Imagine calling your sister's award stupid and then having to watch her acceptance speech over appetizers. She stopped posting altogether for a while. And me? I worked. I met with organizers. I answered interview requests carefully. I started outlining a professional platform of my own focused on mentorship, service design, and event culture. For the first time, I saw a future that wasn't built around waiting for my family to someday approve of me. Then my mother asked if she could come over. She said she wanted to talk in person, really talk, not just clear up misunderstandings. I almost refused. But a different instinct won. I wanted them to see the life they had dismissed, not to impress them, not to punish them, just to make sure they understood, without excuse or distortion, what they had treated as trivial. So I agreed. Saturday afternoon, my apartment. 1 hour. No dramatics. When I sent those boundaries, my sister responded immediately asking if she could come too. Then my father said he would join. That was fine with me. I spent the next 2 days preparing nothing except my mind. I wasn't cleaning up my truth for them anymore. If they came, they were going to meet the version of me they had helped create by underestimating me for years. They arrived 10 minutes early, which was funny because they had been late to every meaningful thing in my life. I opened the door and saw all three of them standing there, wearing expressions that looked carefully arranged during the drive over, like they had rehearsed who would speak first and how sorry they were supposed to seem. My mother tried to hug me the second I opened the door. I stepped back, gave her just enough space to understand the boundary, and invited them in without a smile. My sister walked inside first and glanced around the apartment as if she were seeing it for the first time, which, in a way, she was. My father followed quietly, taking in the room with the same distant look he used whenever he realized he'd misjudged something but wasn't ready to admit it out loud. My award sat on the shelf beside framed event credentials, notebooks full of project drafts, a stack of hospitality journals, and a whiteboard crowded with ideas for the mentorship program I'd already started building. This was the life they had dismissed. This was the work they had mocked. This was the world they had called pointless. I let them sit first. No coffee, no small talk, no hostess smile to soften the edges, just truth. My mother began with tears, of course. She said they didn't realize how important the award was. She said the whole evening had gotten out of hand. My sister jumped in next and claimed she was joking in the group chat, that she hadn't meant it the way it sounded, that people online had twisted everything. My father waited until both of them were done and then said the entire situation had spiraled unnecessarily. That phrase snapped something into place inside me so sharply that I almost thanked him for saying it. I looked directly at him and asked, "What exactly spiraled? My success? Or your embarrassment?" The room went still after that. No one answered. No one even tried. So I kept going. I told them the award mattered long before it appeared on a giant screen. It mattered when I was working 14-hour days while everybody else thought I was too sensitive for wanting more. It mattered when I stayed late after events, fixing problems nobody noticed because I refused to do mediocre work. It mattered when I missed birthdays, holidays, weekends, and sleep because I was building something people now finally respected. It mattered when I invited them, hoping that just once they would show up because they loved me, not because strangers had decided I was worth applauding. I told my sister that calling something stupid doesn't magically become a joke just because public opinion turned against her. I told my mother that "don't blame us" was one of the coldest things anyone had ever said to me, especially when support would have cost her almost nothing. And I told my father that silence is not neutrality. Liking cruelty in silence is still participation. Watching someone belittle your daughter and approving it with one tap still leaves a mark. My mother cried harder then, the kind of crying that usually made everyone rush to comfort her. This time, no one moved. My sister tried to defend herself once more, saying she never thought it would blow up like that, but even she sounded tired of her own excuses by then. My father stared at the floor for a long time, then finally admitted they had handled it badly. Badly. Such a small word for something that had lived in me for years. Eventually, my mother looked at me with swollen eyes and asked what they could do to fix it. That turned out to be the easiest question of the afternoon. "You can't fix that night," I said. "You can only stop pretending it was an accident." Then I told them what I was actually willing to offer: distance, honesty, and time. Nothing theatrical, nothing fake, no sudden family photo over brunch, no emotional social media post about healing. No rushed redemption arc just because being publicly ashamed had made them uncomfortable. If anything ever changed between us, it would be slow, private, and built on truth. They sat with that because there was nothing to argue with. Before they left, my sister paused near the door, one hand on her bag, and said very quietly, "I really didn't think it was that serious." I looked at her for a second and said, "That has always been the problem. You never think my life is serious until other people clap for it." She lowered her eyes after that and walked out without another word. My parents followed behind her, smaller somehow than when they arrived. After the door closed, the apartment felt lighter than silence should feel. I stood there for a moment, looking at the life I had built with no one's permission but my own, and understood something I wish I had learned years earlier. Revenge is not always screaming, exposing, or destroying. Sometimes it is standing fully in your own worth, in full view of the people who belittled you, and letting them realize they no longer have the power to define your value, your future, or your peace. They left carrying shame. I stayed standing in the middle of everything I had earned, and between those two things, only one of us actually won.